Hey folks, Captain Daddy here, Captain Daddy's Creations. Today on Glass Engraving Tutorial for Beginners, we're venturing into using the techniques we've learned and applying it to engraving metal. Stick around to the end for some bonus tips on getting a smoother effect and some 3D illusions. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Hey folks, Captain Daddy here, Captain Daddy's Creation. We're a division of Raven Arts and Graphics. I've been getting requests for a tutorial on how I engrave my axe heads and knives. They're really cool, people love them. Engraving metal is very similar to engraving glass, and it opened up a new world of possibilities as well as potential income. The thermal mugs are huge sellers, aluminum water bottles. Hell, I even engraved a toaster. They're very popular for sports teams, wedding gifts, just all kinds of purposes. I will say it's more stress on your hands on some objects. It takes a tighter grip, but it's well worth the effort. It's okay to engrave just bare metal. It's a cool looking effect, but most of the work I do is acid etched first to give the metal a dark patina. That way the engraving comes out silver on the dark background and really makes it pop. I buy the blank bearded axe heads. It's kind of like the Viking style axes. There's a link in the description. I use ferric chloride for acid etching before I engrave. Keep in mind, this is a very toxic chemical. You need to wear personal protective equipment, face mask, glasses, gloves. You do not want to inhale it. You don't want to get this stuff on you. It is dangerous. I always use it in a well-ventilated area. Also keep in mind any metal objects that are close by will rust. The fumes will make any metal objects nearby rust, so be careful with that. I researched online and found many different formulas and proportions for etching with the acid. Everybody has their own technique, but through my own experimentation I found that a combination of 60% ferric chloride and 40% distilled water works best for me to get a good contrast. I start by sanding the axe head with 550 grit sandpaper, then wipe it down thoroughly with acetone. Then avoid touching it with your hands and contaminating it before it's put into the acid. I submerge the axe head for approximately 90 minutes and mix a liberal amount of baking soda and water for a neutralizing bath while this is soaking in the acid. After about an hour and a half, that's the time limit that seems to work for me, I carefully remove the axe heads from the acid and submerge them in neutralizing bath for approximately 10 minutes. You'll see it kind of foam up and, it's neutralizing the acid. You want it to be safe. Also, when you are not using the acid, keep it covered. Always keep it in a plastic or glass container because it will eat through metal. It is reusable. You can use it over and over, but keep it covered. When you put your items in there to be etched, cover it back up until you're ready to take them back out. When you're mixing the acid with the water, always add the water first, then slowly pour your acid in. That is the safest way to do it. After being in the neutralizing bath, I then wash it with dish detergent, Scotch-Brite pad, or steel wool. The acid etch tends to bring out the flaws created while the metal is being forged. I thought to begin with I did something wrong. I didn't have my mixture right. It's several different shades of black to gray, and I did a lot of research, just racking my brain, couldn't figure out why it was discolored, but I figured out that it is defects with the forging. When you put it in the acid after it has time to etch, it's going to bring those flaws out. You can see weld marks, you can see a lot of things, which this works fine for a rough, rustic looking axe, I guess, but I prefer to even out the tone some, so I use gun bluing. It's a kit to reblue the rifles, the barrels, and everything of a firearm. It's really easy to use. Again, there's a link in the description. Just follow the manufacturer's directions. Clean it, apply the product. 60 seconds later, wash the product off, and it's a much better, darker, even color. Then, after that's said and done, clean it again. You want to keep it clean. Then, as in previous episodes, we use the same technique I used when I engraved the wine bottle, which works well on a lot of non-transparent items. After etching the etch head in ferric chloride and bluing it, I sprayed a light coat of paint similar to the wine bottle. If you saw the previous video on engraving non-transparent items, a light coat of white paint, something that will hold the transfer of my image. I've decided on a sketch of a lion's head that I drew up. I outlined the axe head, sketched it in place. I did this one with the little border around it, which I think looks pretty cool, so I'm going to go with that design. On the reverse side, using the light pad, I've traced back over the image with a charcoal pencil. Now I simply cut it, lay it in position where I want it, tape it in place, and then go back over it with a ballpoint pen to transfer my charcoal. Then we'll be getting ready to engrave it. Hang in there, folks. I think it's going to come out looking pretty good. I've drawn a rough sketch of my border around the outline. I taped my sketch into place, charcoal side down. Sketch back over it using a different colored ballpoint pen to kind of keep track of where I've drawn and where I haven't. But we're going to take this tape off, and we've got a transferred image. You can see it's a little bit dull in places. It doesn't quite come down to my border, but I can use a pen to go back over it, fill things in, flush them out a little bit more. It's enough there really that I can follow it, what's missing just, from knowledge. But to make sure, you can go back over it, make sure it's with a Sharpie, it's not going to rub off as easily and you won't lose your design. You don't want to get partially through with it and then realize you rubbed part of the design off and have to try to get it lined back up and put back in place. So we're just about ready to start engraving on this thing. I've drawn back over my lines with a very fine point Sharpie to kind of redefine them. And my plan is now, every line that I've drawn for the hair will be engraved. Areas like the nose, the mouth, the eye, I'm going to very carefully outline those to leave them black. This is the background color once the paint is taken off. So I outline those, fill in the rest, and will be silver, but leave the mouth, the nose, the lines where the whiskers are, that kind of thing, the ear. Outline them very carefully because you want to leave them the original black color when you take the paint off. Let's get started, see how it comes out. I've loaded a fine point diamond coated bit. Get started doing the line work. Define around the eyes, the nose, the whiskers, the mouth, making sure to leave them blank. If necessary, go a little larger than your design. Then when you start your fill work, then you can very carefully see what you're working with and close it in slowly. You don't want to accidentally fill in something that doesn't need to be filled in. So let's get started. Okay, we've got our line work done. It's looking pretty good so far. I'll have to transfer the image to the other side, get it in place before I remove the paint. We can really see what we're working with. As with anything else, this is simply laying our pattern in place. Our next step, after getting this line work done, take the paint off, then we can start filling in really detail and making it come out looking great. Stick with me. Okay, I've gone ahead and lined the opposite side. Did my border, removed the paint. I used a small ball to detail the hair a little more. Using small circles, filled in the face of the lion. Later we'll go into more detail on making a more realistic engraving and actually cover the strokes of the hair, giving it a little bit more realism. But for now, this is a quick, simple project. When you're finished with it, because this is just plain steel, you'll need to coat it with a thin coat of oil to keep it from rusting, or some of them I've clear coated with a matte clear. You really don't want to use a high gloss. It just doesn't look natural on something rustic. But stay tuned. I've got some cool tips coming up on engraving metal, how it differs from glass, and how to get some really cool effects. When engraving metal, you're dealing with a reflective value that isn't an issue with glass. When engraving glass, you can turn it at any angle. When you're filling in, it doesn't matter. But with metal, when you turn your work and change your angle of attack, the position you're in, it's going to directly affect how your engraved area reflects, which can be used to your advantage. But if you're unaware of this, as I learned when I first started engraving metal, if I start in one direction, holding, for example, this heart I've sketched out here, holding the knife in this position, and for whatever reason, comfort or, the range of movement of my hand, I turn it to finish filling in, you're going to be able to distinctly tell where I made the turn. I'll give you a quick demonstration. I start filling this heart in. I get so far into it and decide, it's more comfortable like this. And I start filling in from this angle. Then I decide, let me turn it like this and do a little more. You can see where this is headed. And I fill in my bare spots. But as you can see, every time I turned it, the reflective value changes and it looks like crap. But these things can be used to your advantage to create some cool effects. I'll show you what I mean. A really cool effect, manipulating the direction of your engraving on metal to capitalize on the reflective value. I'll demonstrate on paper. It's a little bit easier to see. If I draw a circle and the pink lines represent my engraving, I go directly across. I turn my material and go directly across. Turn it again. Always turn your material where you're going in a straight line from top to bottom. And you keep doing this And it comes out with a really crazy cool reflective effect. Continue on, adding more and more lines until you have the entire thing filled in. And as you can see on the metal, it reflects with the light, and as you move it, it appears almost to turn because the reflective value in each line is a little bit shifted slightly in that direction. Now, if you're filling something in, filling in the shape of an object, and your hand is uncomfortable, gets to a position where it's no longer comfortable, and you turn the item again, your reflective value is going to change, and you'll distinctly be able to tell at what point the item turned. If I'm holding the item in this position and I'm filling in, if I turn it 180 degrees and start back filling in, the reflective value of those two are going to match because it's been turned 180 degrees. Anything other than that complete 180 degrees, you'll see a distinctive line between the reflective value of the two areas. Another really cool effect, draw a grid, however many squares you need to take up the space you're working with. Once you have it drawn out, you can go ahead and engrave all of these lines. Then I will draw and engrave lines going from corner to corner on each square. Speed things up a little bit. I'm not going to do the entire thing, but corner to corner, separate it where there is in effect an X in each box. And again, you will be engraving all of these lines. But this is where the cool part comes in. Once you have this drawn out and engraved this grid with the X's throughout the entire grid, with the material in a particular position to start, keep this same angle. We'll start engraving lines this direction on one quadrant. Figure out where you want your light source to come from. As I'm doing this, it's as if the light is from this upper corner, so it's going to look like the top and the left sides are reflective once it's engraved. When you have every quadrant on the left of the square lined like this with your engraver, turn your material and do the same thing on the top. Just that top triangle, just that top quadrant of each square. When you're done, it gives this crazy cool effect of looking almost 3D. At first glance, the light hits it right, and it looks like these are four-sided pyramid-shaped swords and knife blades, and it really is a nice effect. It comes out looking really good. Play around with it, experiment with it, have fun with it. I'm sure you'll come up with ideas that I haven't even thought of. Share them with me. I'd love to see them. I like sharing my work. I like learning. I like teaching. Be sure and stay tuned for future episodes. We're going to be covering a lot more cool stuff. Thanks for bearing with me. Hit that like, share, subscribe, that notification bell. Show Captain Daddy some love. See you next time.